she discovered SpeakYourOwnBook.com. Sarah teamed up with one of our trained writing coaches who listened to Sarah's book idea, asked the right questions, and guided Sarah every step of the way. In 90 minutes, they had written the outline for Sarah's entire book. Within weeks, using the speak writing method, Sarah became a published author, both online and in print. Whether it's a textbook, an autobiography, a novel, or a children's book, SpeakYourOwnBook.com can help.
Yeah.
Visit our website today to download our free 50-question guide and schedule your free consultation. With Speak Writing, anyone can publish a book. Speak your own book today. You speak, we write.
You're watching Speak Your Own Book, the TV show, on Pagan World TV. Please welcome your host, Krys Copeland, head writing coach and co-founder of Speak Your Own Book.
Hello, this is the Speak Your Own Book TV show, and my name is Krys Copeland. I am the head writing coach at Speak Your Own Book and the host of the show. And I have with me today Sencha Skene, and Sencha is here today to talk about Druidry, the new books that he has coming out, and his amazing music, which I've been enjoying over the past few days as I explore its websites. So Sencha, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us today.
Great, thanks for having me.
So let's just kind of get into this. First, I want to talk a little bit about your background. I noticed that you
Sure.
are the head of a Druidic tradition. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yes, it's called the Black Mountain Druid Order, and it was founded, 1996, I want to say. I originally got into Druidry in the late 70s in Pensacola, Florida, when I was living down there. And then
Beautiful place. I've been there before.
Yeah. And a few of us moved to the Asheville, North Carolina area. I was actually living in South Carolina, but the person who owned the land lived in Black Mountain, North Carolina, which is very close to Asheville. And so the grove we started there was the Black Mountain Druid Grove. And then in the early 2000s, we started training people in our Druidry. We have a different approach to Druidry than some of the other traditions. And so when we started that, we named it the Black Mountain Druid Order. My wife and I have since moved to Tacoma, Washington, on the West Coast here, but we kept the name for two reasons. One, Black Mountain came to symbolize a lot more than just the town. It also incorporates the idea of doing shadow work, which is one of the things that makes our order a little different. And the other reason is there's a Mount Rainier here in Tacoma, and it's a 14,000 foot tall mountain. So it's a big, giant black mountain. So we kept the name of the order.
Yeah, it's a beautiful name, and I've seen photos of that. Unfortunately, I haven't actually been to South Carolina, but I've seen photos of that area, and it's definitely on my bucket list to visit. But I have been to Pensacola, and I love the white sand beaches there. It's just a gorgeous place to visit. So and now you moved over to the Washington area, the Tacoma, Washington area.
Yeah, so Tacoma, Seattle area. Yes.
Yeah, so I was reading on your website as I was listening to your newest album, and I have to say you're a prolific artist. You have lots of work over the last decades that you have been doing this, and I'm assuming I think I read that you started producing your own music and things and your writings in the 80s.
Yeah, well, I produced my own music starting in the early 80s, yes. In 2016, I released my first pagan album. I started doing pagan music, and that seemed to be where my voice was at this point in my life. And so we created a publishing company called Elder Grove Media, and we publish books and music by various different pagan authors and pagan artists. So that's been going on since about 2016.
So let's talk about a little bit more about the Shadow Mountain Fae. I
Sure.
read on there that the album came from your experiences after you moved from South Carolina and discovered the Fae that lived in your area of Tacoma.
Yes.
Yeah.
When the order was in the North Carolina, South Carolina, we lived right on the border right before we moved. And we were within 10 minutes, 15 minutes of Bald Rock and Caesar's Head, for those of you who are familiar with the area. And that's where we met there up on a hill. One of our music videos, Firefly Mountain, was actually filmed on Bald Rock, where we had a lot of our rites and rituals. And there was a different energy there. And then when we moved here, I started noticing the energy was different, of course, being 3,000 miles away from where you started out. And it did seem to be a little darker energy. And when I say that, I don't mean anything negative. I mean more conducive to the shadow work and the shamanistic things that we do with our order. And so that album sort of reflected my experiences with that.
That's wonderful. I'm actually very interested in because you talked about that your druidic order was different because you did work with shadow work, and
Yeah.
my experience with shadow work has actually not been so much through the spiritual lens. I actually was
Mhm.
first introduced to it through counseling.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, and so that has really helped me to kind of look at some of the things I don't like so much about myself and figure out
Yes.
where those things came from,
Uh-huh.
and either learn to accept them and live with them as part of who I am, or learn how to change them and become who I want to be. So what was your
Exactly.
experience working with shadow work through through a druidic order?
Well, I am, I should give you a little background before I answer that question. I am a retired marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in Jungian shadow work. If you're familiar with, you said you've been to counseling, so you might be familiar with the idea of Jung, who created the idea of shadow work. And so with my work in therapy, I kind of incorporated that into druidry as well. If you notice, if you start studying some of the leaders in druidry, you'll find that a lot of them are counselors, like Selena Fox or Philip Cargam. These people, they're also counselors. And my doctoral thesis was on therapy as contemporary shamanism, because my PhD was in transpersonal counseling, which is incorporating the spiritual into the counseling realm. So we use that with shadow work. I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, here's a good example of what shadow work looks like. If I'm angry at somebody, a lot of people will tell you, oh, it's wrong to feel angry. So you suppress that anger. And it's like putting a lid on a boiling pot. Eventually it's going to boil over, and then you explode and have an angry outburst. With shadow work, you acknowledge the anger. That doesn't mean you act on it. Doesn't mean you have to act on those dark impulses. What it means is, okay, I'm angry. I'm going to go to this person and tell them, look, I'm angry and I don't want to be. What can we do to work this out? So shadow work involves expressing emotions in positive ways so that you don't get negative consequences. And that really comes into effect when you start engaging in druidic rituals or any kind of magic rite, because you put your entire soul, your entire being into a ritual or a rite or a spell. And if you have some stuff in a pot on the back burner, then that's going to explode when you are trying to do the right. And then that negative energy gets all mixed up with what you're intending to do. And then, of course, remembering the threefold law, you wind up getting back what you're sending out. So that's why it's important to do shadow work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my involvement with paganism in general and earth-based religion in general has been through the Corelli tradition.
Yes.
And so that's my background as far as spirituality.
Quite
And
a
I
few
kind of,
Corellians.
yeah, exactly. That's what I love about.
Yeah.
I noticed as well about yours, because I do notice that some druidic orders are fairly closed, and yours
Mhm.
seems to be very open. You even
Yes.
have the ability to learn through your website, and very
Mhm.
similar to Witch School and how I interacted with the Corellian tradition. So I was really
Yeah.
excited to see the amount of coursework that you have available,
Mhm.
and how it relates to druidry, I believe there's like a level system. Can you tell me a little bit more about the
Yes.
online memberships and courses?
Well, we have a foundational druidry course on the website that is free. It's a year-long course, and there's weekly lessons and then weekly activities for most of the lessons that you do on your own. And we have a forum there, so if you get stuck on anything, you can post on the forum and with your questions, And then either I or one of the other members will come back and give you some feedback on what you need to do to make, to iron out the difficulties. That 1-year course is free, and all you have to do is go to the website and sign up. And so we also have a lot of resources on the website for if you're new to Druidry, don't know what it is, don't know what it's about, then you can go there and just look up things and don't have to commit to anything. Membership in our order is always free. All you have to do is agree to abide by our 4 sacred pillars, and then you become a member. We have over 3,000 members right now worldwide, and about 250 of them are taking the foundational Druidry course right now. And we're in developing the level system. Is there are 4 levels in our order. The first is Dedicant, and once you complete the Dedicant course, which is the foundational Druidry course, then you're eligible for the Bard level course. Then the next level is Vate, which is just a Gallic word for healer, doing energy work, doing herbal medicine, that sort of thing. And then the final level is what we call Archdruid. A lot of other, like the Order of Bards, Vates and Druids, ADF, and these other Druid orders, they can consider their last level Druid. In our order, you're a Druid once you complete the Dedicant path. So the final level in our course is Archdruid, because then at that point you're qualified to be a teacher, be a clergy person in our order, and to have some supervisory duties as well. So that's the reason for the levels in our order. Our order is a little more education intensive than a lot of folks. It would take 4 years to get all the way to Archdruid because each course is a year long. But we find that most people like the extra information. So we kind of praise and value education very highly in our order.
Absolutely. And that's something that I noticed throughout your website, that there is a lot of well-organized intent behind the structure of the courses and how they're set up. And as an educator myself, I do writing, but another part of it is I teach writing and I teach English. And
Yes, okay.
that really drew me in when I was looking through your website. And I want to go back a little bit to those 4 sacred pillars you were talking about,
Okay.
because I feel like as I was reading through them, these are basic core principles that every human being should have,
Yes.
regardless of their religious or spiritual faith. So tell us a little bit more about those.
Sure. A lot of times, let me try to put this diplomatically. A lot of times, some orders get into dogma. Our way is the only correct way, and if you don't do it our way, then you're wrong. Our order and our tradition is that whatever Druidry is for you, that is the path. So we don't try to tell you this is the right way and this is the wrong way. We offer suggestions, and one of our favorite sayings is, takes what's useful and discard the rest. So the 4 sacred pillars are general applications that should be shared by all of humanity. But that's just the basic minimum requirements to consider yourself a Druid or a person seeking Druidry in our order. Respect, reverence, service, and growth. Respect for nature and for the inherent worth and dignity of all people, all life forms, all of nature. Reverence, meaning that you have whole nature to be sacred. The original meaning of the word sacred just meant to be set apart. So it doesn't have to be. We even have agnostics and atheists in our order because they like the 4 sacred pillars and they like what we're doing. So you don't have to have any kind of belief in spiritual or spirit entities to be a member of our order, but you do have to have reverence for nature and reverence for the inherent worth of each person and respect for each person's path. And then let's see, what we got? Reverence, respect, service. Service is, of course, obvious. If you're going to be a member of an organized group that is doing something to further the spiritual growth and education of people and further the growth of sustainability on the planet, then you're expected to do your part. There's an old thing in pagan circles that says the 90-10 rule, that 10% of the people do 90% of the work. In our order, we try to encourage people to do as much work as possible. And it might be as simple as just, going onto the forum and answering questions for people, or just making people aware of sustainability or any of the other things that we teach. And then finally, growth in mind, body, and spirit. Now, growth in body, that doesn't mean, exercising or anything like that, although it could mean that. But we also teach breath work and meditation and things along those lines, and herbal medicine. So that's what we mean by body. And then mind and spirit, of course, the education and then the spiritual aspects of it. The original meaning of the word spirit just meant, it comes from the Latin word for breath. So it just means things that are breathtaking, things that are awe-inspiring, I guess would be the way to put it. And one of the goals that we try to do in our order is to seek the awen. Awen is a Welsh word that just means that which is breathtaking, that which is spiritual, that which what they call peak moments in transpersonal psychology, those things that just take your breath away, like a sunset or the smile of a child, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had those experiences in my life, especially traveling.
Yes.
Recently in Kenya earlier this year, some of those breathtaking moments happened everywhere I
Yes.
looked. It was like I couldn't even breathe the entire time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely, those experiences are really important and foundational. And going those four pillars that you talk about, as I'm an atheist pagan myself, I guess is the
Uh-huh.
best term to describe it.
So am
I
I.
yeah, I believe it. I do believe that magic works, but I believe there's a
Yes.
science behind it that we just don't understand yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I always tell people that I consider myself an agnostic atheist mystic. And what I mean by mystic is that I'm open to the idea that a God or gods exist, but I've never heard a coherent and definitive definition of what a God is. And so when you can tell me that, I'll tell you if I believe in them or not. But I do
absolutely.
believe in the energy that is manifest in the universe that we can work with. And if you want to call that God, then sure, then I believe in a God. But otherwise, it's open to interpretation.
Yeah, that's very similar to my way of thinking as well. I hadn't used that term
Mhm.
mystic, but I think I might
Yeah.
borrow it from you. Absolutely, I do believe that there is a universal energy. I do believe that it is being partially explained through quantum physics now, but
Yes,
we still
yes,
don't have a
exactly.
full grasp of it. Hopefully, one day we will. But then again, that kind of also defeats the purpose of mystery in the
Yeah,
universe. So.
yeah, yeah. And that we do a lot of we talk about quantum things in some of our coursework as well. So, and we don't get into all the mathematics, so don't let that scare people off. It's just the basic idea of you create your own reality and things along those lines. So,
Absolutely. I feel like I
yeah.
think that after our discussion today, I am going to go and sign up for the course. I want to see what it's like and
Great.
experience it myself.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And I encourage everyone listening, if you feel a need to do that as well, go out there and take a look at it. The content is that I've seen on the website. Just as I'll speak just as a fellow, I guess it's more like a social entrepreneurship, similar to what I have as well.
Uh,
Profit is a kind of a side thing. The focus with our business is that we want to create jobs for people in marginalized communities.
yes,
And
yes,
yeah, so it seems like you have a similar goal. While yeah,
yes.
making money is nice, the important thing
Mhm.
is to provide people with tools to better their life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's an old Native American saying, I can't remember the end of it, but I'm going to paraphrase it. So if I butcher it, I apologize. But when the rivers dry up and when the forests burn and when the land is no longer livable, people only then will people realize they can't eat money.
Yes.
So that's the attitude that we try to, what would it take to be sustainable to put back at least as much as we take out of the environment? And that's part of our deep ecology, which is one of the triads of the Black Mountain Druid order.
Absolutely. Things like turning to a resource-based economy are ideas that fascinate me,
Yes,
and
yes.
or volunteer time banks. I think those are great ways of exchanging resources with people and exchanging time and services with people
Yes.
without this system of money that we
Mm-hmm.
currently use. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, so I want to go back to the album, the newest album that you have coming, that
Sure.
you have out, because
Uh-huh.
you had mentioned something that was quite fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
As I was listening through it, the one song that really like drew to me,
Mm-hmm.
and now that you talk about it being based on shadow work, it makes a lot of sense. It was "Cry Baby Holler." Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad you that one was kind of almost an afterthought. But Let me tell you the genesis of that song, and then kind of explain what the meaning was for it. We moved here from South Carolina, and of course there's a lot more of an indigenous presence here in Washington. There's also an organization that works for indigenous children who have been kidnapped or even maybe killed or forced into sex trafficking, that sort of thing. And okay, I'm getting a lot of that album, The Shadow Mountain Fae, was written because I was saying goodbye to the Appalachian Mountains and coming here to the Cascades. So it's kind of like my final tribute to my Appalachian roots. And if you go through the rural South, almost every town has a place called Crybaby Holler or Crybaby Bridge or something like that. It's amazing how many of those. Yeah. And so that seemed like a universal theme. But then there's also, back in the days before healthcare in the ancient Celtic lands, there was a tradition. Well, I don't want to call it a tradition because that's but they would take unwanted children and leave them out in the fields, or stick them in a hollow tree or something like that. And then there was a legend that the Fae had come and abducted them, left a changeling in their place or something like that. So that was what passed for Planned Parenthood in ancient times. So there was all these lost souls, all these lost children that were, dying out in the woods. And so all of these children all over the world that are suffering because of things like that, or like being abducted or being murdered even, or parental abuse, all of that, those kind of came together in that song. And that's what that song is about. It might not sound like it's really a pagan themed song at first listen, but it's really about all the lost children that have been left behind, so to speak.
Yeah, and I could feel that as I was listening through the song. Also, I want to say that I noticed your connection to the 80s rock music throughout that, and
Yes.
kind of hillbilly rock as well.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. It seems like it has a little bit of the pickup from Sweet Home Alabama throughout that throughout
Crybaby,
Crybaby.
no, not know what was the other one. Hoodoo Granny. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so when I was listening through, I was like, oh, these sound like vaguely familiar, and I
Yeah.
could feel that connection to 80s rock, which is, it's something super important to me because I grew up on it with my dad. He taught me a lot
Yeah.
about it. I'm
Yeah.
by no means an expert, but definitely an enthusiast.
I learned to play guitar through a lot of 70s and 80s music, mainly Pink Floyd, that sort of thing. But that Pink Floyd is one of my bigger influences, but then all the other great 70s and 80s music as well.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this and you're a pagan who likes that 70s, 80s rock sound, or even like the hillbilly rock sound, that this is a great album to listen to. Now, I was listening through some of your other albums as well, and there's excellent ones for chanting and for ritual work as well. So, I want to encourage people to go on there and listen. I have a question for you about
Sure.
your books. Let's switch topics over to from your
Okay.
music.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about the 2 new books that you have coming up this year.
Yes, the first one, hopefully released around the spring of 2023, is Animal Wisdom for Druids. And then the second one, hopefully in the fall or the winter of 2023, is The Weirding Way. The Animal Wisdom for Druids book came about because our order focuses on a specifically American brand of Druidry. And what I mean by that, my roots are in the Appalachians, so I learned a lot of what they call hoodoo magic there, where herbal medicine and certain things that are common healing practices in the Appalachian region. And so we had a lot of animal lore growing up. My Scottish great-grandmother taught me a lot of the animal lore and that sort of thing. And so this book is a way of doing that and teaching people about it. And it will have 2 sections. It is the first section will describe how we use spirit animal guides in our order. And then the second section will be a reference section that has animals. We try to incorporate animals from all over the world because while Druidry started in the British Isles and in Europe, it's now spread all over the world. And we have people in our order from Australia, from Brazil, from Alaska, from everywhere in the world. So I tried to include as many animals as possible in that references section. But the thing that's unique about the animal oracle that we used is it's tied to the wheel of the year. So you can have as many as 9 spirit animals in your life. Most people don't have that many, but we do have, opportunity for that in this animal oracle. And it's based on the wheel of the year. It starts off at the winter solstice and goes all the way around and comes back full circle to the winter solstice. And each part of the wheel of the year represents a phase of life. Like you start off with the winter solstice, and that's birth to 10 years. And then you go with Imbolc, which is 10 to 20 years, and so on around the wheel. And then in the center is your central spirit animal, the one that is there for all of your life. And that represents the center of the wheel, the well of wisdom, so to speak. And that's what's different and unique. We don't claim that that's any kind of ancient tradition. That's just something that we've pieced together over time as we work with spirit animals in our tradition. So, and when I say tradition, the order has only been around since 1996, but we have a rule in our order that if you do it more than 3 times, it's a tradition. So that's what I mean when I use the word tradition, referring to our order. So that's the idea there, is that it's just something that we have found useful, and don't claim that it's something that ancient Druids practice, because we're a new growth based on inspiration from our ancestors. And then the second book, The Weirding Way. Although I'm a Druid, I have a Norse hearth culture, which means that I honor the Norse pantheon or honor the Norse tales and the mythology and the stories based on my ancestral heritage. So the Weirding Way is more of that, along those lines. But again, that's also generalized as much as possible, so that you don't have to be like from Norway to understand the book. I try to make it as generic as possible for everyone on the earth who might be interested in reading it. But it's the origin of that book. I love Native American tales. And if you notice, when they're telling a story, it's prose, but it's almost poetic because of the metaphor and the use of language and all of that. And this Weirding Way book is my attempt to try to make prose poetic, and at the same time use those metaphors in a spiritual way to help people to do their shadow work and to be able to raise their awareness in the way of weird, as we call it. And Weirding Way, weird is, for those of you not familiar with the Norse traditions, weird means fate, means destiny. It's about all the possibilities that a person faces in their life, and how to determine what your destiny is, and how those destinies interrelate with other people's destinies, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I was actually just saw a meme about that on Facebook the other day, breaking down like where the history of the word weird came from, and
Yes,
how it
yes.
dated back to that, to being related to fate, and being able to twist or bend fate.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, very similar, I think, to the origins of the word Wicca in general. Yeah.
Yes, they're very similar. If you look at all the different names that we have for magic folk, or whatever you want to call us, Druid just means wise one. To Wicca, witch means wise one. Weird means wise one. A lot of the Native American terms, shaman means the one who knows, the one who is able to do ecstatic trances. And even the word Odin just means the ecstatic one, and that comes from the shaking and the ecstatic experience that you have when you go into a shamanic trance. So they're all, the further back you go, the more all these things have in common. And that's fascinating to me, that there's a painting in France that's 50,000 years old, and it's a painting of a guy dressed as Cernunnos. So I don't think that they called him Cernunnos back then, but
Yeah, and I've seen those paintings before, and it does feel like being connected to something that is super ancient. And
yes, yes.
you're absolutely right, when it's all connected to wisdom and knowledge, and our ability to understand ourselves and each other and the universe. It's all
Yes.
a fascinating tapestry of interconnection And I love exploring that and learning about it.
Yes.
Yeah. So going back to the book or your book on animal wisdom,
Mhm.
I find that fascinating because I've just recently, earlier this year, helped Lady Stephanie, the first priestess of the Karelian tradition, complete her book on Karelian shamanism, which
Yes.
talks about similar things with using a wheel and animal totems. And so, tell me a little bit. About a little bit more about the animal totems in the book, and
Sure.
yeah,
What would you, I mean, yeah,
well,
how we use them, or
yeah,
what was
yeah,
the
like,
idea?
how do you find out which one is yours? How do you connect with that animal?
Okay. Now, and there are lots of different theories on this, and we try to present them all and not say that this one is the right way or this one is the wrong way. If you ever want to start an argument on the social media, all you got to do is post your opinion, and there'll be 15 people to tell you you're wrong. But one tradition says that the spirit chooses you, the animal chooses you. And we incorporate that, but there's also some things you can do if you don't have a spirit animal that would help you to find yours. And some of those signs would be, do you have an animal that you dream about a lot? Do you have an animal that follows you when you go into the woods? When you're out in nature, do you have an animal that seems to attract you, that you find yourself looking for that animal? Do you collect toys or stuffed animals or things like that? My wife collects cats, and when I say cats, I don't mean like live cats. I mean little statues of cats. And I kid her that we're going to have to buy another house to put all her cats in. So if you're doing that, then that obviously must mean that the cat energy is calling to you. So whatever those energies are that are calling to you, that can be a source of your spirit animal. And we also have on the website, the Black Mountain Druid Order website, we have a meditation that you can do to find your spirit animal. You just, it's a video recording, and it's also on our YouTube channel that you can do that meditation, and then that will open you up to being able to find your spirit animal. And when we do that, we sometimes have, more than one animal show up. So that's one of the reasons that we created this idea of 9 separate spirit animals in your lifetime. And not all people will have that, but some do. And they're, what do I do with this? Okay, here's how you do this. This is what we put it out, and this is how it all relates to each other. So that's how we do it in our order.
That's very similar to so my grandmother is half Native American. With most
Yeah.
of that Native American, she still has a mix of tribes even with that, but the
Yes.
majority of that is Cherokee.
Yes.
So within the Cherokee tradition, I was given the name hummingbird, and that was my given totem animal,
Yes.
because I had I had very and still have very severe ADHD, and I would never sit still. So that was
Yeah.
the animal that the elder at that time thought I should receive.
Yeah.
And then my second one was as a teenager going through the meditation of going into a cave and finding that the totem animal that chooses you, and
Yes.
that one was a deer. So,
Hmm.
and I remember being a super angsty teenager who really liked Edgar Allan Poe and wanted to have a raven, and I kept telling the deer to move out of the way so I could find my raven.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, it is interesting how these animals start showing up in our lives and how that
Hmm.
happens for us. Um,
Yeah.
what are some ways that you can interact with the animal, or maybe bring it about more, bring their qualities or characteristics into your life more?
Yes. To now we make it general and work backwards from there. So if you believe that your spirit animal is an actual living entity, then you can use the energy that way. For those of us who are agnostic, atheist, skeptical in general, we consider it archetypal energy. And what I mean by archetypal energy, that is, okay, think about a lion, and what characteristics does a lion have? Now think about something like a rabbit. What characteristics does a rabbit have? Those characteristics are the archetypal energy of those animals. So you can make use of that archetypal energy by calling it into yourself in certain situations. So suppose you're going to go ask your boss for a raise. You summon that archetypal lion energy to be bold and courageous when you go in there to ask for a raise. And then you can use that energy to improve areas of your life, so to speak. We do something called a coyote walk meditation, which is a mindful meditation walk, but you're becoming the coyote. You're taking that archetypal energy into yourself. So we first walk around in an area as a human being, and okay, tell me what you notice. Now take this archetypal energy of the coyote into yourself. Imagine that you have become a coyote. Now, what's your experience of the environment now? What is different? How do you notice different things? Do you notice that you're focusing on your sense of smell more? Do you notice that you're more aware of predators and prey in the wild? So that's one way that we can do that. And another way is they just show up in your dreams and kick your butt sometimes. Had that experience as well. One of the things with the shamanic tradition, a lot of shamanic traditions, is you'll have a dream about an animal devouring you or ripping you apart. And that is a good sign that you should probably look into a shamanic path, because spirit animals tear down the person that you are so that you can be rebuilt into your shamanic life. So if you've ever had a dream like that, that might be a good idea or a good indication that you should explore shamanic pathways.
I've actually experienced similar dreams with that type
Yeah.
of idea of either being chased by some kind of unknown beast or attacked by an unknown beast. And
Yes.
another dream that has been a reoccurring one is transforming into an animal. So I think that's
Yeah.
also, is that something that you also consider a connection to the shamanic world?
Yes. We haven't done that since we moved to Tacoma, because we moved here in the middle of a pandemic. But when we were in the Carolinas, we would enact the wild hunt, and everybody would make a spirit mask of their spirit animal, and then they would become that animal for the rite. And then we would, go through the woods and do various different things. For the sake of privacy, I won't talk too much about what those things were. But we drew in the archetypal energy of those animals so that we could become those animals for the purposes of the rite. And you can also do that, in your daily life. And that doesn't mean going into your boss's office and barking like a dog, but it can mean, and incorporating the archetypal energy of the dog to be loyal or to be friendly or to playful or that sort of thing. So yes, you can become the animal. And there are rites to do that in some of the more advanced courses that we'll be developing over the coming year.
Wonderful. I'm actually very, I kind of have a little bit of an idea that I'd like to share with you about that,
Sure.
because when I was a teacher in the United States, I live in
Hmm.
the Netherlands now, but when I was
Oh, okay.
teaching in the United States, we had this character trait package that we would teach to the children as once a week as part of a story time, and it
Yeah.
would include the traits of an animal. You want to be like an eagle this week, a leader this week, or
Yes.
a badger, very busy and working hard, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all of those different traits that come out from animals were categorized into core character traits to help children understand and develop them within themselves. And there were all types of
Yeah.
activities that went with that. I feel like that's something that is seriously needed
Hmm.
within the pagan community in general, and probably in particular within the druidic community. I think it would
Yes.
be very fascinating to see that from a druidic point of view.
And that's going back to the Animal Wisdom for Druids book, that Wheel of the Year aspect. Um, the central, the ninth, the core animal that is in your particular chart, your particular oracle, is the core characteristic animal that guides your life. So, for example, what is your spirit animal that is there through the entire pathway of your life? What core characteristics do you identify in yourself that can be identified with your spirit animal? And when I say that, that doesn't mean necessarily. So, for example, we were talking about the lion. The lion is, courageous, fierce, brave, that sort of thing. that doesn't mean that you have to be a courageous, fierce, and brave person yourself. It means that maybe your spirit animal came into your life because you lack those characteristics and you're trying to develop them within yourself. So that might be your central spirit animal because you're learning how to do that over time. And then the rest are just periods of time or phases of your life that are guiding you. Like, I'm an entirely different person now that I'll be 63 next month than I was when I was in my 20s. Thank goodness. But you have different spirit animals that help you guide through those phases. Then they have their characteristics to teach you and to help you to grow with as well. So yeah, we're incorporating that. It's a great idea, and then it's good to see that other people are doing it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that I found that really a fascinating core character trait package that we had in our curriculum. So I wanted to pass that along.
Sure.
Yeah, but I do want to go back a little bit to the the other book that you also have coming out,
Sure.
The Weirding Way.
Mhm.
So if you were to break down what that means by the weirding or the wisdom, or the path of wisdom or the way of wisdom, what does that mean to you as a human being, or as a shaman, or as a druid?
Yes. That gets the weirding way gets more heavily into the shadow work. We do a little bit of shadow work in the foundational druidry course, and then it'll be a little more in depth in the other druid courses as we progress. But the weirding way is specifically geared towards shamanism and shadow work and how they relate to each other and what that other world means. So the book starts out with a poem about the three sisters, and of course that's the Norns. For those of you familiar with the Norse tradition, the Norns are the past, present, and the future. And one sees the past, one sees the present, one sees the future, and they sit at the roots of the world tree, weaving the fate of humanity. Some legends say that they're actually weaving, like each thread is a life, or each thread is a pathway that's being woven into this tapestry that is the universe. Some other traditions have them marking runes on sticks, and this is how getting into I don't want to get too far into the Norse ideas, but runes can be used for binding fate and binding yourself to a certain pathway, and so they're marking those on the sticks at the foot of the tree. But in either case, what they are doing is shaping reality and shaping fate of humankind. So the weirding way is the way that your fate interplays with all other people. And not to get too complex, but I'll see if I can try to put this into um, a brief summary. Imagine that time doesn't exist, and time is just an illusion. Time is, somebody said, time is nature's way of making sure that everything doesn't happen all at once. But if you see that time is an illusion, then all possibilities are happening right now. All possibilities exist at the same time. If you picture time, or the weirding way, or what some people call the void or the other world, as a wheel with spokes, the time happens on the outside of the wheel. And there at the center of the wheel, there is no time. All possibilities are open to you. If you travel down a spoke to the outside of the wheel, then you've embedded yourself in time. You've embedded yourself into a causal relationship with the world around you. If you're there at the center, then all these possibilities are available. So the weirding way is about being able to go to the center, so to speak. And then once you do that, you're able to experience all these possibilities, to even do divination, or to see what the other fates of, if I took this path, what would happen, that sort of thing. And that's something else that's common to all traditions. I'm using a Norse template for that, a Norse-ish template for that, trying to make it as universal as possible. But if you study any shamanic tradition of any indigenous culture, you'll see the similar ideas all wrapped up into that. That's at the center. All possibilities are open to you. You can say, well, if I tried this, what would be the result? And travel down that thread from the center and say, okay, well, I probably don't want to do that. Let's try this other path. So that's kind of the gist of the book. But then a lot of it is, how do you do that? How do you, as a person setting out on the path, learn to do that yourself? So that's kind of the
Absolutely.
general idea. So
Yeah, that idea of like as someone who lives in a linear time, a linear
right.
universe,
Mhm.
how do you step out of that and look beyond this moment that we're at, or
Yes,
this line that we're following? Yeah, I
exactly.
find that incredibly fascinating. And I want to just really quickly reiterate the amount of work, the body of work that you have put together over the last, what you said you've been working on this since the early 80s. So over the
Yes.
last 40 plus years of your life.
Mhm.
And when you think about the pagans that are maybe not quite where you're at, or maybe they want to be where you're at, as far as
Mhm.
putting out the messages that they have and the wisdom that they want to share, what advice would you give them for becoming an artist or an author or a teacher?
Be open to the spirit. And whatever the spirit means to you. And that could just be intuitive inspiration for that matter. It doesn't have to be something ethereal and some other entity out there. It could just be paying attention to that inner voice, doing that shadow work. The creativity comes from the shadow, because that's where that bleeding edge is, so to speak. um, One of my favorite artists, James Hubble, and I'm paraphrasing, not remembering the quote exactly. He said the artist functions as the raw nerve for society, that artists create their most creative art when there is something wrong, there's a problem that needs to be addressed. And if you think about your 3 to 5 favorite pieces of art, whether it's a painting or a movie or a song
Poetry.
or
Yeah,
a poetry, what is the bleeding edge there? What is the raw nerve that it's being addressed? And the most moving songs are the ones that do that, or the most moving paintings are the ones that address that bleeding edge, or movies or books or whatever your creative aspect is, to be able to say what is wrong here and what can I do to make it right, in terms of being an artist or an author or even a pagan, a druid, Wiccan, whatever. The idea, one of the things that we're talking about, the Weirding Way, the book of Weirding Way, um, there are opposing forces in the universe, and the universe is working to put them together in balance. I always liken it to a battery. Um, from when a battery has a charge, the energy flows from one pole of the battery to the other. When the battery is in perfect harmony, it's a dead battery because all the energy has flowed from one side to the other. So what that means is, yes, there is conflict in the universe. There is difficulty in the universe, but the reason for that is that's where the energy flows. When everything is at peace and when everything is static, then there's no need for energy to flow, because there's nothing that needs to be fixed. And that, I can see where people might take that as a grim view of the universe, but I see it as a possibility, because you can't learn anything unless you are open to challenges. If you're never challenged, you didn't really learn anything. You already knew it. So
absolutely.
when you're meeting those challenges, that's where you find the real creativity. And so if anybody's trying to become an artist of any sort, that's the best advice I think I could give them, is just to be open to that. Where are the difficulties? Where are the challenges? And what can you make of it?
Absolutely. When you're talking about that, what immediately comes to mind is Newton's three laws of motion, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And there is science behind everything that we're talking about today. Like the
Oh yeah, yeah.
psychology of totem animals reminds me
Hmm.
of Superwoman pose, right? You do this for 90 seconds, it literally changes the chemistry in your brain.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what's to say that we can't use totem animals to pull forth those same chemical changes in our brain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that,
this. Mhm.
I'm sorry, I just finished up reading a study about that, where they did a study on that exact thing. And I don't have the citation right now, but while I was working on the animal wisdom book, and there are studies out there where if you emulate an animal, it does change the chemistry of your brain, changes your brain's wiring. Or even if you just pet a therapy animal or play with a therapy animal, it does the same thing.
Yes, I've even noticed that I've just started a game on the PS4 called Stray, and
Mhm.
you play a cat through it. And
Oh, wow.
from the very beginning, you have to start thinking like a cat and not a human.
Yeah,
You can't climb up the ladders like you would with a human character. You have to jump onto a
yeah,
perch.
yeah,
So that's fascinating to me, that idea. And I was like the kind of kid who like played pretend animals all the time. So
yeah, yeah.
that whole idea is fascinating to me. I want to thank you so much today for your
Sure.
time, Shinka, and
Thanks for
for
having me.
sharing this information with us, and for making these resources available for everyone. So please, everyone, go check out Shinka's website. Can you give us the information where we can find you on social media or online?
Sure. We have a YouTube channel, Black Mountain Druid Order. The website is blackmountaindruidorder.com, or you can also get there with blackmountaindruidry.com. And we do have a TV show that comes out on Mondays. It's a 30-minute show, and it's on Pagan World TV. So you might want to check that out as well.
Yeah, so if you're tuning in for this, you're probably from Pagan World TV. Please check out that one as well. I think ours are fairly close in time together too, because I have a
Oh,
Monday
cool.
show.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Shinka, and I want to
Sure.
have you back on in the future
Sure.
as a guest. But thank you everyone for listening in today. My name is Krys Copeland. This is Sencha Skene, and I thank you for listening today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for watching Speak Your Own Book, the TV show on Pagan World TV, hosted by head writing coach and co-founder Krys Copeland. Please join us next time on Speak Your Own Book.
Sarah had been trying to write a book for ages, but she was still on page 1, until she discovered SpeakYourOwnBook.com. Sarah teamed up with one of our trained writing coaches, who listened to Sarah's book idea, asked the right questions, and guided Sarah every step of the way. In 90 minutes, they had written the outline for Sarah's entire book. Within weeks, using the speak writing method, Sarah became a published author, both online and in print. Whether it's a textbook, an autobiography, a novel, or a children's book, SpeakYourOwnBook.com can help.
Yeah.
Visit our website today to download our free 50-question guide and schedule your free consultation. With Speak Writing, anyone can publish a book. Speak your own book today. You speak, we write.
Working